Okay, I want to show briefly how to raise an area of terrain without affecting the relative geometry. So traditionally we use the absolute setting, which, as you know, creates, like if you click shift and then it'll create either a hole or a raised area. I could sample that. That's at 16. It'll make it like that. So you know how to do that. However, sometimes we want to preserve the relative geometry around it. So I'm going to make my brush larger. So this is about the size of a chunk, just a little bit smaller. And you'll see here, see, I want to bring it out here to the sandy area, I think. And I'm going to raise that whole mountain and everything around it. That's by changing this to the relative. However, I've also raised it too high, so I'm going to undo that again. I'm going to change it. I only want this raised about 4. So I'm going to change it to a 4 instead of 16. And now then it's only going to raise it 4 feet. Now it will, if you click twice, it will raise it twice, so instead of 4 it'll be 8. And so in this way I'm able to preserve the relative geometry and still raise terrain along the coastline. It's going to change it a little bit, but it's not going to change it a whole lot. Like, we're not going to end up with giant flat areas all along the coast. We'll still have all the hills and everything that we want. I can use a smaller brush, obviously, and make a smaller area like that. Of course, we still have to smooth out the corners, so it's not going to be exactly the same. As you can see here that I'm doing, so I have to blend that, and that's with the averager. And I'm going to go back and curve that up because I feel I've flattened it too much. So I'm just going to add a little curve back to it. And then average it again, so we don't have those edges. Probably too strong there. I just need a really soft brush and to get that right. And sometimes you have to go to the back side to really see where is the crevice and how do I fix that. And I can make this smaller too, so I'm only affecting just the area. Or a 1. 1 might be too small. Let's try 7. So I'm just affecting that edge and not too much of the rest of the geometry. So we're still keeping that whole hill, all of that, that's still preserved. Just smoothing it out here. So that it looks right. Don't have to go all the way around the edge. And see, sometimes you change your camera angle and you can see things you couldn't see before. I'm going to go ahead and increase that a little. It's taking too long. So just smooth it all out. Sometimes you kind of go back and forth to get it to look right. Sometimes the shadow doesn't go away and you can't really tell what you're doing. You have to move the camera and get the game to notice, oh, you changed something. And then it'll fix the shadowing. And I recommend probably not doing too many squares until you get them smoothed out. If you go along the row and you go ka-chunk, 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 and then you try to smooth them all out, I don't know, it might work, but I think it's better to focus on a small area and fix it as you go. And you don't get it too distorted and you can retain as much of the correct geometry as possible. So here, let's see, I might want to raise this here along the coast just a little bit more. So I think this is all supposed to be a beach area here. So I try to match up my squares so they're next to each other. And see, there's one I overlapped, so it was more like an 8 instead of a 4, but it'll be okay. And this still isn't high enough, so to raise it again. And still not. Maybe I'm using too small a brush, hard to say. Yeah, probably am using too small a brush. There, now it's coming up. See how it's coming up there? That's what we want. I want it to blend together so that it comes up instead of down. Well, now it's going down again. So some squares over here to fix. Anyway, that shows you a little bit how to use the difference between the absolute and the relative geometry. I'm going to make this a little smaller, curve that back up again. Except I didn't click the right button. Now it's curving up. It's kind of a neat tool. I haven't had a lot of use for it, but having some use for it has been... I have a little use for it now since we have this coastline that we have to fix that it's too shallow. So we have to raise the coast. And so it works really nice for that. Get our coast up to where it's supposed to be. That probably really needs to be bigger. All the way out to the rocks there. So there's our small area. I don't really want to work on much more than that at once. Go down to our small brush again. Yeah, let's see. Flattened out my little hill there again, didn't I? So here I'm going to flatten down to the bottom so it gets down. So that's a little rocky cliff there. I'll flatten that out there. And there's our beach. It's starting to look more like a beach now instead of undersea ocean. go too low there, didn't I? That'll be alright. So you still end up flattening out a lot, but this area here was already flat, so I think it's okay. But it's really important for when you're doing hills, if you need to preserve those hills. It's so important not to use too strong of an averaging brush too when you're trying to preserve a hill. And save. Always remember to save. Well, that's it for this tutorial on the absolute versus relative explicit height tool. I hope it helps you.